Hi guys, it is a gorgeous day here in the end times in paradise over here in East Bumblefuck, New Mexico, over in the United States here on this gorgeous Friday, March 31st, 2017. But we're actually on the phone to Norway today for installment 3 of the Humpty Dumpty Tribe interview series. And today we're talking to an old buddy of mine, Torstein Viddal from Norway. I wish Torstein would talk to me more publicly and our public comments. He's been talking to me for years, mostly privately, but we're going to listen to Torstein today. He's a man worth listening to, and I'm just going to pretty much let him introduce himself. And then we're going to dive into what Torstein thinks about the situation on the planet. So Torstein Viddal, welcome to Humpty Dumpty Tribe, and just introduce yourself to the folks and we'll start this conversation. Take it away.
Oh shit, sorry. Thank you, Hambone. I guess I was also once a normal guy, working low-pay IT jobs, some TV and newspaper and magazine jobs, steady long relationships, but determined not to have kids, like you.
All right.
Always a strong proponent of logic and science. I guess I tried to deny the existence of money and brute force in the world for the longest time, just dismissing it as stupid. Then I guess at the time of the COP15 climate summit in Copenhagen in 2009, I realized big oil and big bomb, or let's just call it Obama for short, was indeed a vast force to be reckoned with. And in some sort of last-ditch desperate countermeasure, I started work on my Pute app, as in compute or dispute. And it's a super ambitious attempt to settle things once and for all based on pure logic. So a pretty naive project there.
So you're going to solve this problem with logic.
So in a way, that was the opposite of Facebook, where the same stupid battles have to be fought every day. Same already settled science or logic. And the Pute app was, of course, doomed to fail, and not due to technical difficulties, but human nature above all. Big oil climate deniers.
Yes, I do know those guys.
Yeah, they would just refuse to use or accept the app. End of story. It's no use if it's only the good guys referencing it.
So you started with. I'm trying to get a fix. So. You just really got into this in 2009. At what point would you say you started down this rabbit hole of what's going on this planet and started figuring out things weren't exactly like the mainstream media were painting them to be? How long have you been down here with us?
Yeah, I think, the failure of the Pute app that I was working on, and with it came the loss of any hope that we would ever come to our senses. That was sort of my entrance to the collapse or doom of civilization scene, because all the money interests and the brute force, the military interests, and absolutely no focus on common sense or reason or science. So I had to give that up. So here we are, 2017, and you can say what you will, but it makes no difference whatsoever.
Well, give us your summation. How would you describe life on planet Earth here, and 1/4 of the way through 2017, and how do you describe the situation in a nutshell?
Well, it's kind of like. What's it called, that other dystopia novel? Not 1984, but the other one.
Brave New World.
New World, yeah. It's like you can say what you want, and you yourself, you're not even stopped at the airport, or you're not banned from YouTube, It's like the plan is to just drown you in just every clueless moron other piece of information and video out there. There's no use for censorship, really.
So what would you, how do you describe what do you see as, let's say, the top 3 threats facing civilization and this planet? How is your reading of the handwriting of the wall?
I think, I've been studying, after I left the Pewt project, I've been studying sort of the only hard currency or only hard facts of the climate debate, which is the steady collapse of the Arctic, the sea ice. And so that is kind of sort of undeniable proof that we are going south, if you understand. Are you there?
Literally. I think literally the North Pole is sliding to the south, not figuratively and literally. So your special interest is, well, living where you do would be the collapse of the Arctic sea ice.
Yeah, it's because it's sort of as Paul Beckwith says, it's not a local problem. It's what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. So it's like we have very good data for what's happening up there, and the consequences are global, and it's very, very short term. I was quite shocked, a couple of months ago when I realized how short term it is that we lose all the sea ice in 12 months of the year, So.
When do you predict we're going to see an ice-free Arctic? Sounds like you do a lot of reading on the subject and studying it. So what's your call?
There's 2 different ice frees. One is the summer ice free, which could happen, any time, like this summer or next. But the much harder question, or the much more, civilization collapsing question, is when we lose the winter ice. And for now, with just the losses we've had over the past year and the past 2 years, just the average losses we've had in ice volume, those trends point towards 24 and 25, then that's sort of the end.
Are you saying 24 and 25 years out, or the years 2024 and 2025?
I'm afraid this is the last thing, the 2024, 2025.
So that's 7 or 8 years. You're looking at the handwriting on the wall. You're calling a permanently ice-free Arctic in 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, but that's only if it's linear and if it doesn't speed up. And everything tells us it's going to speed up. It's not going to just go in a steady decline like that, because you get stronger and stronger feedbacks, and at the end, it's just some ice flake here and there, and it's going to be rough.
So who are some of your references? Who do you study and listen to and recommend to other people just starting down this rabbit hole? Who would you recommend they tune into for more on this?
I've created the Arctic Sea Ice group on Facebook, and I encourage people to go on there. And
so you're the one who created that?
Yeah, I created it in the last days of January this year, so it's a very new group, about 100 members. But to answer your question, I'm not. I try not to be so people-centric, so I recommend. At least for the Arctic stuff, I recommend just looking at the data yourself. That's what I do, because I'm an anarchist, and I don't trust fucking anyone. So.
Yes, just finding anyone to trust. So, everyone always wonders, I hate just to default to this, but it just gives a yardstick. So are you part of the which side of this ramping up Paul Beckwith versus Guy McPherson debate are you falling? Are you falling on one side or the other for these guys escalating battle between the two of them?
You know, Hambone, I love both of them, so I don't. I'm not gonna answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. It's on one hand, it's somewhat humorous, but it's really sad to see these two guys slugging it out like this all over Facebook and YouTube when we all need to be working together. There's so few of us who get it.
I think maybe the explanation is what you alluded to the other day on YouTube. You know, you said that people love drama and people just grasp for the drama because then they don't have to think about the collapse and the demise of civilization. So maybe that's an element of it.
Well, but you're not with. Well, I won't put words in your mouth. Are you or are you not with a guy that we've got? Let's call it 10 years. Do you see us being extinct in 10 years? Is it this bad, or you think we're going to come through this to the other side?
Yeah, I've been YouTubing and thinking a bit about that, and I consciously choose to focus on when we lose civilization because that's much easier, you know, to point out. And then the other very hard thing is like when will this species or the other species go? That's very, very difficult because you have 8,000 meter high mountains in Asia, you have islands in the Pacific, you have Arctic areas like Greenland and Canada. You know, it's like the planet isn't all London or New York. The whole planet won't react in the same way. It will be, I'm sure, decades between when one part goes and the other part goes. So I think civilization or society will collapse at some point in the next decade in most parts of the world. But I think I'm pretty sure some people will be able to hold out, you know, until mid-century anyway. So just to survive.
Now, are you like me and Guy and Derek Jensen? Are you a promoter of the collapse of global industrial civilization to save the biosphere, or are you more like Paul Beckwith and thinking it's something that we should try to fix and save at this point?
I'm pretty sure, you know, I haven't done that many magic mushrooms as you've been talking about, but on some of those trips to the woods, I've got pretty clear messages from the other critters living out there that they wouldn't mind civilization just going away. You know, they wouldn't mind us. They look at us as demons. You know, that's my interpretation. That the other animals and plants, they look at humans as demons when we are out there in the woods.
Well, I have to say the photograph you sent me is I love the irony of now we were talking before we started recording. I know why we had to take this beautiful birch tree out, but that is that's I don't know, that was just I just enjoy the irony.
Yeah, you know.
When you talk about the animals and plants thinking of us as demons, so you're holding what is that? A giant bow saw, and your buddy's holding an axe there.
That's right. I mean, we struggled for hours to get that one tree down, you know.
So at least you didn't use a chainsaw or
we wanted to use a chainsaw, but it was defunct. You know, it wasn't. You know, it was some kind of mechanical error. So.
Don't you love it when the chainsaw won't start? I have to admit I love using chainsaws. I go berserk when you put a chainsaw in this old eco-Nazi's hand. But I always get a chuckle when I get all prepped to go out there in the woods with my gas sucking chainsaw and it will not start. There's nothing that makes you feel humbled than a gas powered chainsaw that will not start while you're cranking and cussing it, and the tree is just sitting there laughing at you and thoroughly enjoying your temper tantrum.
I know exactly
Anyway,
what you
I
mean.
want to talk about obviously one of the big debates that I've certainly been talking about, because I don't know, as I admitted just a couple of days ago, is the whole methane bomb thing. I mean, you can go on. This debate is one. No matter where your position is, you can go on and research it yourself, and whatever your preconceived notion is, you can find scientific reports to back up. So I'm sure you have studied this issue probably more than me. So I'm curious, where do you fall on along the methane bomb debate, and how it's going to impact abrupt climate change, and when, if you believe it is, when do you think it's going to blow?
Yeah, I kind of placed it on the timeline between now and when we have no winter ice, no winter sea ice. So I would say anytime between September this year and 2020, pretty much. We will have this huge, like 50 gigaton or whatever, plume of methane from the what I call the East Bumblefuck Sea in in the Arctic, East Siberian Sea, because that's very shallow. It's like up to 50 meters deep, and you heat up that water in the summer. And it also heats up the seabed, and then you have a thaw. So
and then kaboom. So you do not agree with Paul's latest?
It's
he
not.
seemed
You
to
know,
find
it's
that
not.
USGS report hook, line, and sinker.
It's not really. It's not really Paul, because he even said in his YouTube that this is. I'm just relaying this USGS report, and he did that in 4 videos or something. And USGS, the Geological Service, that's directly under the president. So, if you elect the wrong president in your country, the USGS will be at his service. So it's like political science.
But that report was written under Obama, not under Trump. That was that.
True, but it's like what's the difference? What's the difference? And they're writing now that Donald will have a hard time to get oil and gas production as high as Obama was able to get it during his period. So, so there's no big difference.
Let's talk about over there in Norway. What is how would you say? So I hear the approval rating for Donald Trump in his own country. I think one poll shows 36% is. It's the worst. He is the least popular president ever since they started polling. Where would you, if they took a poll of Norwegians today on supporting Donald Trump, what do you think the support level in Norway would be for Donald Trump?
Norway is a very naive country or population, so it will probably be like 60, 70, 80% against him, just because our mainstream media are just going crazy about being anti-Trump. They don't have news anymore. It's just anti-Trump,
Well, yeah, that's, he's doubled my workload. I mean, I just did, every Friday now. It used to be, as I say, it used to be the easiest day of the week for me to do my ecological meltdown roundup rant, but now I have to do 2 entirely different. One is all Donald all the time, and one is every other threat against the planet other than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He completely. I mean, here in the mainstream media, any environmental news, I would say Donald Trump dominates about 70%, if not higher.
Yeah.
And then even when you go on over to Alternet, to their environment pages, about 70% of the environmental stories on planet Earth have the word Trump in the headline, and so I don't know what to do about it. Do you ignore him?
Well, don't you think this is kind of done on purpose for some reason? I have no clue why, but it seems it's a big, detraction, or what do you call it?
Distraction.
Distraction, yeah, from everything. It's like Trump.
Oh boy. Well, anyway, enough about that guy. Oh, I know what I wanted to mention when we were talking about the methane bomb debate. Now, the other big debate that I see, which I believe is going to turn in once we get our minds a little bit off of Donald Trump, is the whole geoengineering debate. Where do you think it's a good idea? And whether or not, first I want to know, do you think, and I'm particularly talking to solar radiation management, is it a good or bad idea? And B, whichever way you think on that, is it ever going to happen, or is it complete techno-utopian pipe dream?
Yeah, I would have to go a bit easy or careful here, but because if you or I wanted to, for any reason, do the opposite, to get it to heat up faster, to make civilization go away faster. Some people in America would maybe view that as terrorism, if you want to take out the entire planetary system, So, but to answer your question about spreading sulfur and stuff to shut out the sun, isn't that what they did in the Matrix, in the movie? They tried to beat the AI, the machines. So they tried to block their solar cells by fucking up the atmosphere. Isn't that sort of the plot there? So I don't know, but I don't think they will have time. I mean, if they are working on these timelines from the silly IPCC climate panel, they think they have decades or centuries to fix things, So maybe they will be fooled by their own, crap science, that they think they can start this in 2025 or something, So then it will never happen.
Do you think some either rogue country or crazy billionaire like Bill Gates or whoever it ends up, or Elon Musk or someone, because right now there's no laws to prevent apparently you or me from blowing off an anthropogenic volcano, if we can think about it. Do you see any danger of that? I'm talking about in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Or do you think it's so in its infancy that that's nothing to worry about?
I think you have to remember, Hambone, that these things will have to be done every day, every week for decades. So it's like, let's say that everybody seems to like to hate Putin. Let's say that Vladimir Putin, would release a lot of sulfur to shut out the sun over the Arctic. Then you could just, move in and make him stop doing that, because this is something that you would have to renew and do all the time for decades.
But I think it's not just decades; it's more like millennia.
Yeah. So the moment the moment
you can't stop.
The moment you stop doing it, you will get a 5-degree jump. So it's like. I mean, so the
back in the tube.
Yeah, the problem is.
I mean, once you open this can of worms, brother, you better have 100% confidence in it.
You need to have all your earlier ducks in a row.
Geoengineering is going to save this civilization from collapse. I don't hear that anywhere in your voice.
I think our goose is already cooked.
Geoengineering or not. Okay, good Lord, we're already over 25 minutes into this interview. You emailed me a couple of days ago, and I want you I just want you to take off. You were talking about the climate deception plan, or remind me and explain to our listeners what that's all about. That you were writing me about the climate. What is the climate deception going on this planet?
I think it's to cut it short. It's the whole UN climate panel. Is not what it's cracked up to be. I think it's a clever deception to pretend that the UN is going to fix everything. And I think if you study it more closely, it goes very much hand in hand with the big oil, long-term planning to be able to pump and sell oil and gas forever or until the whole thing collapses. So I don't think it's proper science. I think it's politicized, just as the deniers would say, that the IPCC is politicized. And you have governments censoring the few scientists who are actually doing a good job there. Then the government of Saudi Arabia or America can just say, no, can we delete that chapter? I don't like that graph. So that's sort of the working of the IPCC. So I think it's a huge deception to control the whole climate debate, because everybody believes that the climate panel is doing a good and excellent job, but they're not. They're clearly not, because they tell us that the Arctic sea ice in summer will last until 2080 or 2090, some bullcrap like that. So they're clearly not doing an honest job.
And I'm going to take a wild guess that you do not have much faith in the Paris Climate Agreement keeping global temperatures from rising under 2 degrees Celsius between now and the year 2100. Is that a safe bet?
Yeah, pretty much. But, we will always have Paris, It's a beautiful city. So.
Well, you mentioned, it sounds like you are pretty convinced, as I am, that global industrial civilization is teetering on the brink of collapse and possibly the planet right, but behind that. So just, I always like to talk with people. I mean, how is this affecting your life? I mean, how do you, being down this rabbit hole and just realizing how hopeless this situation is, how do you what is your secret from just falling into just an absolute existential despair, depression? What do you do to keep from that happening in your own life?
I think my solution is the old solution from Schopenhauer.
A philosopher who lived in the 1700s, I think, and so it's actually to do some form of art, paint or make music or something. In my case, I'm a writer, and when I focus on that, it's like I'm writing this book, and you get some kind of filter between yourself and reality, because you are going to finish that book, and you're trying to make this crisis into some kind of plot in a book. So that was his advice, Arthur Schopenhauer, and I think that's a good one. I think that's working for me. And when it comes to how many years I've been down the rabbit hole, I think I already realized in my late teens, that this whole society was unsustainable, couldn't last. It's just trying to grow and grow on a finite planet. And also my fellow Norwegian eco-philosophers, there were 4 guys who were pretty known in Norway at that time. And they were also very much anti-civilization and pessimistic about the 21st century, but optimistic about the 22nd century. That's, you know, in the next century after this one.
Yeah. Do you think that starting to get a whiff of this knowledge in your teens, did that play in your decision to not be a breeder?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the second of the philosophers I checked out, Peter Zapfe. He made a big point about not breeding in his own life and in his philosophy. And he basically wrote the book On the Tragic, which is about the tragicness of humanity, basically. You know.
Who is that writer?
Zapfe. He's a
How do you spell that?
Zapffe, but it's not translated to English or any other language. So
Oh, really? I've never heard the name. He sounds like someone I would like to read for sure.
It's great. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have passed the critical. I can't believe how quickly 30 minutes just went past. So wrapping it up. If you had to get a 60-second, if this was the mainstream media interviewing you instead of Humpty Dumpty Tribe, and you had 60 seconds to get the message that you want to get out to the planet here in 2017, what would that 60-second message be to the people?
Okay, then I would say that if you are a young green person or a young environmentalist and you want to know what's going on this planet, you should listen to Hambone Littletail on YouTube. Because he's the real bang for the buck, you know. He's the real deal.
Well, that's your advice. I sure appreciate that. I am quite honored that would be your advice to the planet, to listen to anything this old eco-Nazi former real estate agent house flipper has to say. But that's what we're doing here at Humpty Dumpty Tribe, Torstein, I'm just trying to open this debate that nobody is having. And I do certainly appreciate you being part of it. And as I say, if you would like to start commenting a little more publicly, I mean, I enjoy our private email conversations, but you certainly feel welcome to to enter the public debate on the comments whenever you want to. And keep up the good fight, amigo.
Yeah, thank you. I will try to do that. Okay.
All right, I'll stick around for a minute. I'm just going to sign off here. So anyway, guys, that was my old buddy Torstein Viddal weighing in on the situation on this planet. And feel free to comment and let us know what you think. And I'm going to wrap this up, and I still haven't gotten to my manure tea on my garden, so that's where I'm heading for this third interview. Bye, guys.